As an avid student of presidential history, this reporter is acutely aware of the fact that down through the centuries, from time to time, some presidents have had cabinets that were notable for the preponderance of sleazy, corrupt bastards who populated them. And the first two that come to mind are the cabinets of Ulysses S. Grant and Warren G. Harding. In Grant's case, he was a thoroughly honorable and decent man. A great man, in fact, one of the greatest men our country has ever produced. On the day he turned 41, he was an utter failure in life, thrown out of the army and reduced to working in his dad's tannery shop. But on the day he turned 46, he was the most famous man in the country and the greatest battlefield commander in the history of the U.S. Army. He was routinely being compared as a tactician to Alexander the Great and Napoleon. He held a rank previously held only by George freaking Washington himself, and the Democrats and Republicans both wanted him to be their next nominee for president, which is to say, the line between mediocrity and greatness is often a very thin one indeed, and a man never knows when external circumstances and exigencies will conspire to catapult him from the one to the other. But by the time Grant assumed the presidency in March of 1869, he had a problem on his hands. He was a total political neophyte. He didn't know anybody in Washington City, as the national capital was commonly known at that time. Nearly all the people he knew were career army officers, just like he was. So when it came time to select his cabinet secretaries, he needed a lot of help and a lot of guidance. And he had to turn for that help and guidance to Washington insiders whom he didn't know all that well and whom he didn't have any particular reason to trust. And if you find yourself thinking this story sounds strangely familiar, it's because that's the exact same conundrum that Donald Trump was faced with after he prevailed in the 2016 election. And we discussed those parallels at some length back in the episode that dealt with the Compromise of 1876, which I won't promise to link to it in the description because when I do make that promise, I nearly always forget. But the conundrum goes something like this. The people elected me to disrupt the status quo and clean up the den of vipers in Washington, but if I'm going to fill all these jobs that I need to fill, I have little choice but to hire some of those very same vipers. And so, by the time he leaves office at the end of his second term in early 1877, Grant's administration is known primarily for the amount of sleazy, corrupt, dishonest, self-serving crap that certain members of his cabinet have gotten up to. And since the buck stops with the man in charge, a lot of people had come to think that Grant himself was personally corrupt, which he never was. In point of fact, he was a better president with more bona fide accomplishments than he ever got credit for, and since he wound up dying of throat cancer only a few years after leaving office, he wasn't around all that long to defend his own legacy. He did manage just barely to get his memoirs finished, but he devoted many more chapters to the war than he did to his presidency. And it's really only been in the last 20 or 30 years that presidential historians have begun reevaluating his legacy and rehabilitating his reputation. With Harding, it was a much simpler matter. Harding was, to use the modern parlance, a stuffed suit, an empty vessel, a guy who was good at retail politics and good at winning elections, but didn't have all that much interest in the nuts and bolts of actual governance. So he was content to delegate pretty much everything to his subordinates, so he could have more time to get shit-faced drunk and carry on with his much younger mistress. And if you're thinking, wait a minute, wasn't it on Harding's watch that Prohibition came into force? Why, yes. Yes, it was. And Harding gave not one single damn about it, just like nobody else gave a damn about it, because the number of Americans, including the president, who actually stopped drinking just because alcohol became illegal was somewhere between 0 and 0. But when Harding suddenly dropped dead in a San Francisco hotel room on 2 August 1923 at the age of just 57, the people of the country still thought he was an honorable man who was presiding over an honorable administration, and so his death was very widely mourned. Lots of schools and streets and parks and buildings were renamed in his honor, many of which still carry his name right up to the present day. But then, about a year after Harding's death, the lid got blown off the Teapot Dome scandal, wherein members of the Harding cabinet had conspired to sell federal oil leases in exchange for cold, hard cash under the table, most notably among them the Secretary of the Interior, Albert G. Fall, the original Fall guy, who went on to earn the distinction of being the first ever cabinet secretary to go to prison. And then the public became aware of the fact that Harding had been not the honorable man they thought, but more of a drunk-ass philanderer who had, at a minimum, tacit knowledge of the corruption in his cabinet and did nothing about it. And his reputation was posthumously destroyed and has never recovered, which it never will, because it damn well shouldn't. So what am I getting at here with this guided tour through the greatest hits of presidential cabinet sleaze and malfeasance? Well, here it is. In terms of the sheer breadth and scope of its shocking, brazen, endemic corruption, not either one of those two cabinets, nor any other cabinet for that matter, can ever hold a candle to the current den of jackals who serve at the pleasure of President and semi-animated cadaver Joseph Robinette Biden Jr. And as you might expect, I have much to say on the matter. Jim Eagle, hit the music if you please. From high atop the battlements of Castle Curmudgeon, where I was remiss in not mentioning that Mrs. Harding refused to have an autopsy done on her husband's body, and the rumor persists to this day that she poisoned his ass because he refused to get rid of his side piece. So take that for what you will. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. America, and all ships at sea. Welcome to the program. I'm your eponymous host and humble servant. And if you didn't see the testimony of Attorney General Merrick Garland before the House Judiciary Committee yesterday, or 2 days ago by the time you're watching this, you really should watch it. And you should force yourself to sit through the whole thing, because frankly, it is enough to shock the conscience of anybody who possesses one. You think it's impossible for a man to perjure himself 6 times in less than 3 minutes? Well, think again, because our man Merrick did just that and then some. And this isn't just any man perjuring himself. This is America's top cop, her number one law enforcement official, the man who is charged with one of the most solemn and crucially important duties that exists in any liberal democracy, namely the duty to ensure that the nation's laws, as duly enacted by the Congress, are enforced in a manner consistent with the Constitution and in keeping with the bedrock principles of due process and equal protection under the law. But Merrick Garland cares about all that just about as much as Warren Harding cared about his marriage vows, which is to say, homeboy don't give a fuck. Merrick Garland seems to have a very clear understanding that he was hired to do 2 jobs and 2 jobs only. Number 1, to insulate Joe Biden and the Biden crime family from any and all legal jeopardy. And number 2, to unleash the wrath of God on anybody Joe Biden identifies as his political enemy. And you could tell this dude was planning on doing a whole hell of a lot of bald-faced lying just from the way in which he framed his opening statement, where he spent the first 3 or 4 minutes blubbering about how he represents all 115,000 employees of the Department of Justice, and these are such great people, and they work so hard, and they're all so very decent and honorable. The implication being, obviously, that if you go after Merrick Garland, then you are slandering the character of every single person who works at the DOJ, right down to the fucking night janitor at the Hoover Building. And that's a game that all sleazy, corrupt Democrats love to play. It's a game Joe Biden himself has been playing for upwards of half a century now. When you want to insulate yourself from responsibility for your own reprehensible conduct, well, just grab somebody else and use them as a rhetorical human shield. Biden does it all the time with his own dead son. He does it almost as a reflex action. It's disgusting. What? Of course I'm not a crook. Did I tell you I've got a dead son who died in combat in Iraq? Or from burn pit fumes in Afghanistan? Or in a wildfire in Hawaii? Or from brain cancer in Delhi? It's hard remembering sometimes, but the point is my dead son died in whatever way will most easily get me out of having to answer that question. And if that doesn't work, hell, I'll just lie about something else. Not a joke, folks! But you probably already know which part of that Merrick Garland opening sentence pissed me off the most. The DOJ has 115 goddamn thousand employees? Yeah, Let's reduce that number by about 2/3, and I'll be willing to call that a fairly good start. I felt bad for Jim Jordan yesterday, who I'm a big fan of, by the way. As much as I detest the GOP, he's one of the few good ones. He just looked completely bewildered and incredulous that this dude was lying out his ass with such total self-assurance and abandon, falling into every perjury trap with such aplomb. Mr. Garland, have you spoken to anybody in the FBI about the Hunter Biden investigation? I don't recollect the answer to that question. You don't recollect? Yes, I don't recall. You don't know whether you've talked to anyone in the FBI about your department's investigation of the president's son? You're serious? Is that your final answer? Oh, well, that's right, Chairman Jordan. I just don't know. But you know what I do know? I know the night janitor at the Hoover building works his ass off, making those toilets all nice and sparkly clean, and I shall be damned, sir, if I sit here and listen to you cast aspersions on his character. And the best part about that lie is Garland apparently forgot that in his last appearance before the same committee, he stated for the record under oath that he had, in fact, talked to people at the FBI about the Hunter Biden investigation. So one or the other of those is perjury. Great job, idiot. And another highlight was when Garland was under questioning from Jeff Van Drew of New Jersey, recovering Democrat, about the DOJ's persecution campaign against traditional Catholics. A campaign that everybody damn well knows is happening because we have the FBI's internal memos where they declared that traditional Catholics are domestic violent extremists, and they're so dangerous that the FBI has been lovingly infiltrating their various congregations all across the country. And Garland got really flustered here. He fumbled around for a good answer, and when he couldn't summon one because he's an idiot, he went for his own unique version of the "don't you know who the hell I am" card. He blurts out, the idea that a person of my background would support religious persecution, well, that's just offensive. And you know what else? The receptionist at DOJ headquarters, she works really hard, and I won't hear you talk about her this way. Now, nobody seems exactly sure what point he was attempting to make here, except that, as best we can surmise, he thinks the fact that he's a secular, non-practicing Jew means his department could never, ever participate in the persecution of Catholics. And best of luck with that gambit, dude. Hope that works out for you. Because, again, we've got the damn memos. Oh, but our man Merrick's got an answer for that one. I was shocked and outraged by those memos, he shouts. To which Van Drew quite reasonably asks, so were the authors of those memos fired or disciplined in any way for engaging in such brazen religious persecution? Can I use a lifeline? He also claimed to have no idea whether any FBI agents or assets were present at the Capitol on 6 January 2021, which seems like a weird thing for the goddamn Attorney General to not know after 2.5 years. Even while people are actively being sentenced to years and decades in prison over it. But it takes more than one rat bastard son of a bitch to make the most corrupt cabinet in history, serving the most corrupt president in history. So we'd be remiss here in not mentioning the many achievements of the Homeland Security Secretary, term used loosely, the enemy saboteur Alejandro Mayorkas, who has probably perjured himself before Congress even more times than our man Merrick has, which is really saying something. If lying to Congress under oath was the Olympics, these two assholes would be like Jesse Owens and Michael Phelps. Just generational talents. We shall never see their like again. So we basically don't even have a legal immigration system anymore. Our legal immigration system has been supplanted and replaced by just pay your fee to the drug cartel, hand over your daughter to be sold into sex slavery, set one foot on our side of the river, and you are good to go. Here's your free smartphone, here's your EBT card, here's your free plane ticket to the destination of your choosing. Hope you don't mind taking a 2 a.m. flight, but you know how it is. We got to keep this stuff on the down low. Welcome to America. Please stay forever, Mr. What was your name again? Speedy Gonzalez. Welcome, Mr. Gonzalez. Can I interest you in a voter registration card before we send you on your way? The enemy saboteur Mayorkas has repeatedly gone before Congress, raised his right hand, sworn a solemn oath to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury, and proceeded to state with a straight face that the border is secure and he is working tirelessly, I say, to enforce this country's immigration laws. So, this is what it looks like when you're trying? Like, for real? Because nobody's exactly sure how many illegal aliens have ingressed our territory in contravention of our laws since the corpse of Joe Biden was installed in the White House. But it seems a pretty safe bet that the number is north of 10 million. By some estimates, fully 15% of the population is now illegal aliens. And the enemy saboteur Mayorkas says this is what it looks like when he is trying his very best. And when you look at the crowds of people pouring over the totally undefended border with no federal agents anywhere in sight, do the people you see look like refugees and asylum seekers? Because from where this reporter is sitting, I see at least 95% military-age males who all appear well-fed and well-clothed. So, what again are they seeking refuge and asylum from? But hey, I'm sure it'll be fine. Why not let 10+ million unskilled, unvetted, totally anonymous military-age males into the country and just cut them loose to go do whatever they want? What the hell could ever go wrong? We all know what the truth is, obviously, because we are not as stupid as the corpse of Joe Biden and the enemy saboteur Mayorkas think we are. It has been part of Democrat Party orthodoxy for 50 years now that maximizing illegal immigration helps them win elections. The difference is that they used to pretend otherwise, but that mask has been well and truly dropped. Frankly, I'm surprised it took them this long to think of doing what they have now done. They took a law from the early 70s that was designed to confer legal asylum on Cuban boat people who were fleeing communist tyranny and landing in South Florida, and they discovered there was nothing in that law that prevented them from simply declaring that all illegal border crossers are refugees and asylum seekers. Boom! Problem solved, baby, and it's all legal. Suck on that, Mr. and Mrs. America. But I can think of another term for a group of 10+ million military-age males who have nothing much to do all day. It's a 4-letter word, spelled A-R-M-Y. And you should be under no illusions about what the real endgame might actually be here. It isn't just about stealing elections and replacing well-paid American workers with low-paid foreigners, although those are very nice side benefits. Because if and when the day arrives that armed men bust down your door and bundle you and your family into a boxcar for the trip to the prison camp, make no mistake, the men holding the guns, they will be Joe Biden's illegal aliens. And the same thing goes for you, Europe. So I would advise everybody to wake the hell up in a big damn hurry. Securing the border is all well and good, but it does nothing to remove the people who are already here and should not be. So the next time your squishy douchebag Republican congressman starts whining about, oh, we can't go rounding people up, that's not who we are, you tell him to shut his ass up, and you tell him in no uncertain terms, no, asshole, if you want to keep your damn job, I need to see some roundups, some big damn roundups, in a big damn hurry. I am your employer. Don't forget it and consider yourself on notice. Thanks very much indeed for watching. Have a great day and a pleasant tomorrow. Be sure and tune in for the Blast Radio Sunday, 8 Eastern, 5 Pacific. See you next time. Do not comply. Get off my lawn!